Start recording.
Now, they might that to you, I'll give it to Chantel. There you go. They might have one up there, I don't know. Chantel, did you put a packet for Mr. Reagan?
I didn't because he wasn't.
Oh,
here.
Glenn is kind of filling in.
Yeah, I was just looking for an agenda here. Okay.
Oh, we had 15.
Yeah, they're all gone. I can go make, if you want me to go make some more, I'll go make some more. Just take
Yeah,
that.
there's probably not gonna be much, well, with the paper.
I'm gonna go, let me do this.
When you go make it.
So let me. Go make you a.
Is my spot like that? Is my stuff on the table? It looks like it does.
Maybe at the end of the table, does it, right? But there's two right there, that's the one.
That's great. Miss Jones, if yours to go make a name for copy, somebody was
They took my packet?
Miss Jones, to go make a copy, she's bringing it right back.
Oh. So I'll have it.
Hey, bro, it wasn't supposed to rain today, man. We took the roof off. Now we gotta go put the roof back on.
Oh. Get it right. Oh, it rained?
Hello, everybody.
So your R's are the ones.
Okay, got a couple of announcements before we begin. I'd like to thank Mr. Glenn Howie for sitting in for Mr. Tom Reagan. Mr. Tom Reagan could not be with us this evening. Also, we have a pretty busy schedule tonight. So I just want to remind everyone, that it's only with proper decorum that we respect everyone from the city and the city council, and we conduct it in a timely manner for everyone to be given a fair and equal treatment. So the agenda will be followed, and anyone deviating from the agenda without it being properly amended will be called out of order. Do not interrupt the person who has the floor. You are not to speak unless recognized by the presiding official, whether that be a committee chair during a committee meeting or the mayor during a council meeting. Outbursts from the public will not be tolerated. You will be called out of order. Any further outbursts will be called removal from the meeting. Public input is welcome. However, public disruption of a meeting is not allowed. When called upon to address a committee or the full council, the individual must be recognized by the presiding official before approaching the podium to speak. The use of vulgar language is inappropriate and disrespectful. It will not be permitted in this chamber, but if used by anyone, you will be called out of order and immediately escorted out of the chamber. Threats and aggressive behavior from anyone in this chamber, either verbal or physical, will result in immediate removal from the chamber. Weapons of any kind are not allowed in this chamber unless you're on duty as a commissioned officer. Proof of being on duty and being duly commissioned. If you are called out of order, you are immediately to cease your action or behavior, otherwise you will be called out of order again and escorted out of the chamber. The 3-minute rule will be strictly enforced for all who have been granted the floor to speak by the presiding officer. Discussion will be germane to the topic. Only the presiding official is allowed to interrupt the speaker. While in the chamber, we're asking each member of the council to respect each other, respect the mayor, respect all city employees, and respect guests who are here to witness and participate in the proceedings of this body. Nothing less than your full cooperation is acceptable, and nothing more is given than my full commitment to see that you abide by those instructions. Thank you very much.
Question on your proposal?
Sir,
Okay. You mentioned about the firearms in the chamber. Unless I'm mistaken, I think Louisiana law provides cover for anybody that wants to carry a weapon inside the state of Louisiana.
Mr. Martin, I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, I'm just asking, I just want to
Yes,
make sure
sir.
that
No,
we
sir.
are on the
No,
same
sir.
page.
That is not the case.
I'm asking, I'm not saying.
No, I'm saying that I have the right to be able to allow that particular person.
Okay,
And is Chief Broussard here?
it's just a question. It's
Chief
not that,
Broussard? Or Captain Burrell? Chief, I thought I saw Chief Broussard just now. Okay. All right, thank you. Also, I ask everyone, if you do not have a mask, please, if you do not have one, I hate to ask you to leave, but it's mandated that you have a mask.
we supposed to provide masks.
Okay?
Why haven't the
You
city
don't have-
provided masks? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Why
Mr.
haven't the
Martin.
city provided masks for the people?
We do at City Hall.
Well, I mean, this is an open body.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you,
you should
Mr.
have
Martin.
masks here for those who don't have.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Okay, I
Appreciate
just
your
want to make
advice.
that clear to you.
Thank you. You don't have to make it clear. We got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. All right. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fogler.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation. Mr. Primo.
Lord, please watch over and protect our city. Please keep our citizens safe. Please give us the strength and the guidance that we need to make the right decisions here tonight. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, phone call please.
Jeff Cavell,
Here.
Ryan Ford,
Here.
Clint Prayer,
Here.
Lyle Copeland,
Here.
Vernon Morton, Stephen Primo,
Here.
Samuel Reggie,
Here.
Kim Stringfellow,
Here.
and Byron Woolridge.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, if you don't mind, I'm gonna move the order a little bit. I wanna allow the appearances first. The appearances, which is number 6. Which is number 6. The appearances by, what, okay, before you continue, what ruling are you saying that it's point of order?
For the simple clarification, we have amendments that we would like to make. I have 4. You have not asked if there are any amendments that the council would like to make. I mean, if you want to be on protocol, be on protocol.
I am on protocol, and I'm allowing the appearances to go first, Mr. Martin. Thank you. Representative John Stefanski.
That was my favorite council bill. Hey, look, I apologize, I wanted to get here a few minutes early, but I was in Baton Rouge and the traffic got me. So, but anyway, I wanted to come talk to y'all. Obviously, it's been a couple of years since I got to address the council with COVID, and so I always like to try to give some updates. This session was particularly interesting, similar to last year's, just because COVID and the protocols, and so much of that, has dominated our conversations. Also, though, a big part of it was we did a lot of reform. We did a lot of good things this year, and particularly we did a lot of good tax reform this year. And the reason that's relevant is not only because it's a good thing for our state, but secondly because you as elected officials are going to be asked when it comes time for the elections in October what to support on the constitutional amendments. And I would really ask y'all, please ask your constituents, and people ask you who ask y'all for advice, to support the tax reform measures. And there's going to be 3 on the ballot. There's going to be one dealing with centralized sales tax, which is extremely important in order for not only for us to attract jobs and keep jobs here, but also just to really streamline that collection. The second deals with corporate and personal income tax. We're actually lowering the rate in exchange for giving up a deduction. While it's not going to change what you pay, it's going to be great for helping us recruit people to come to this state, to move here, and also to recruit businesses to come here. It should jump us up in the rankings anywhere from 5 to 10 places when you're looking at Louisiana on a national tax foundation ranking. And so these 2 things are very important. Since I got in the legislature, we've been working on similar elements, never were able to do them. Finally this year, we were able to get those across the finish line. But, for better or for worse, Louisiana locks a lot of things in their constitution. These are some of the things that were locked in our constitution, so you, the voters, have to actually vote on those in order for them to pass. And so my humble ask is that you please, when people ask you about those, please support the tax changes that we're going to see on the ballot coming this fall. On another note, there was a lot of money this year, not only from federal dollars, but also we had some state surplus dollars. And our local area has greatly benefited from that, in Crowley in particular. Both me, Representative Villiers, Senator Heather Cloud, Senator Bob Hinskins, and Senator Mark Abraham all worked very well together, and we were successful in bringing some money home. And so I kind of wanted to just spend a few minutes with y'all and highlight that. One of the things I'm real proud of, I met with the mayor early on when it looked like we might have some extra money. I've been watching the fire station for years, and those guys not being able to get in there. I think the mayor and the council probably already had plans to get those guys in there, but I asked if I can drive some money towards that, please let me know. So we were successful in getting $125,000 in cash so that we can rebuild the living quarters for the fire station so those guys can move back into them. So I'm really excited about that, and I know the firemen as well. I got a chance to do a tour of what they're going to do up there, and it looks great. So proud of that. The second thing, speaking with the mayor and also speaking with Councilman Martin, we've been looking at with the Martin Luther King Center, trying to do some upgrades on their bathrooms as well. We've talked about some other rec upgrades like y'all are doing with the parks, specifically some money to be able to spend on that. And then also, I was looking for a way to make sure that our law enforcement has what it needs as well. And so originally it was, you know, when I was trying to move money around on the level, on the state level, I had all these things nicely earmarked. The police department got a little bit, the Martin Luther King Center got a little bit, so our rec department got a little bit, and unfortunately it took up too many pages. And so I had to consolidate a lot of those things. So instead, I'm sending the city just $150,000, you know, in cash, but I earmarked it for those three things. And so I'd ask, you know, look, I don't tell y'all how to vote, and a lot of other elected officials don't tell me how to vote, but what I would ask is that we prioritize those three areas, make sure, see if there's something that we can take care of the police department. Certainly want to make sure we're taking care of the Martin Luther King Center. I know that's a big priority, get some new bathrooms there. And then whatever's left over, y'all prioritize for kind of rec and how y'all think you can best use that. Those would be my asks. Also, you know, there was more good news for Crowley. So this was just in surplus cash that I was able to send that home to Crowley. Also, we had the capital outlay bill. And so specifically for, like, when we're talking about Crowley, I was successful in getting $6.2 million to do LA 13 south to Vermilion Parish on an overlay. That road's really bad. That's something that affects us. And so I was proud to be able to do that money. Also, we're continuing the plans with trying to replace that pontoon bridge over in Esterwood. Even though that's not in Crowley, that affects us as well. We're moving forward on that. They're telling me that we have a letting date in 2023 for that. So it is on track and is considered fully funding. We actually sent another $1 million to it this year. When we're looking at Crowley, also we've moved that money up into priority one for the sewage pump station for the, I mess up on this word every, commoner. When I tell you, I don't think I've ever said that name right one time, but we were successful in getting forward that $405,000 moved up for that. We were also successful in bumping up $100,000 in priority one for the sewage expansion along the service road with a lot of trailing money. We also were successful in getting $200,000 in cash again on this for the additional repairs to the Rice Festival building. If y'all remember, we actually had to double the money for the Rice Festival building. We funded the renos, then we had that extra $200,000. Unfortunately, we ran into a problem where the project description didn't allow us to use that for how the council wanted to try to use that. I went back in, amended that language in the bill to make sure that we didn't lose out on that money since it was already appropriated. So you're gonna have another $200,000 coming for the Rice Festival building, which, speaking with the mayor, I believe his intention is to use that to replace the roof. So you'll have that coming as well. We also have $90,000 coming for the restoration and rehabilitation of the Rice Community Theater. Some extra money, I believe, to do the facade. I think that's when we talked, that was the point of that. We also have $810,000 in P2 coming for the ultraviolet disinfection system improvements for the wastewater treatment facility. So a lot of money, as you can see, a lot of the things I mentioned, I always try to prioritize, obviously, infrastructure, but water and roads. You know, I get more complaints on our roads and just water system. And if you can't have a decent road to drive on and you don't have drinkable water, I mean, how are we going to build our community? How are we going to get people to move here? And so throughout Acadia Parish and the municipalities that I represent, you're going to continue to see those be my focus. So proud of that. As we're going forward into next year, what I was spending the majority of my time today doing was working on redistricting. So we are heading into our redistricting cycle. The census is actually releasing our numbers tomorrow. We're going to have those tomorrow. I then have the task as chairman of House and Governmental Affairs of sitting down and redrawing not only the House districts, but also playing a part in the Senate districts, Congress, the Public Service Commission, BESI, and the judiciary. And so we have our hands full. In particular, my committee has its hands full, and we're probably looking at an early 2022 special session. So a lot of work in this upcoming year, but as always, I continue to say it's an honor to represent this district. It's an honor to represent this city. You know, it's my hometown. It's cool every time I'm in Baton Rouge, I get to say something proud about being from Crowley, and I love it. Wouldn't trade it for the world. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman, for allowing me to talk to you today. If I can ever help with something, I hope all of y'all have my cell phone number. If you don't, I'm happy to give it to you. Call me. Happy to help. And let's keep working all as a group to make Crowley better. So thank y'all so much. Yeah, what's up?
Also, excuse me, Mr. Martin, 1 second, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know that I spoke to Mr. Hefter on geographical districting, and he's supposed to give that information, just like you said, and let the council know as soon as possible by letter.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what's often lost in this conversation is, you know, the police, jury, and y'all have to, on a small level, y'all have to accomplish the same goal. So it's, think about what y'all have to do on a 10 to 100 times other level of what we're doing at Baton Rouge. It's a lot, but it's fun. You know, it's part of the process. Mr. Martin.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, personally. You know, we talked a lot about the bathrooms and what the heck was going on over here. Nothing was moving, and every time we turn around, it was this, that, and the other. I'm just hoping and praying that everybody in this council and this chamber know that there's a lot of money going on to the Rice Festival building, but the city of Crowley does not own that Rice Festival building. We own the MLK, okay? And I want to make it clear, and I'm hoping that each council member here put top priority into the restrooms, which should have been built 2 years ago, okay? I just want to make that clear. And the other thing, they've been asking me, when is the state gambling starting?
On the sports betting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the fantasy sports actually went live, so no reason I probably know too much about this because I carried both bills. So I carried the fantasy sports bill, that passed, and that went live in July. So you can currently play fantasy sports. Acadia Parish is one of the parishes that passed it, so we can do that. Acadia Parish is also one of the parishes that passed sports betting. That's gonna take a little bit longer. Now, we wrote emergency rules so that you're gonna be able to play, we believe, be able to play mobile sooner, and I'm expecting late fall, that's gonna be live. You're gonna be able to play mobile for sports betting. The requirement, however, for these licenses is not only they have to pay a lot of money, but they have to physically build out a sports book. So you think of your traditional casinos like Harrah's in New Orleans and LaBerge, they ask you to have to go in, build out a full sports book in order for them to be able to get that license. So
I know Mossville did.
yeah, and so they have to do that first, they have to pay all the money for the licenses, but we think the mobile applications will be live by the end of this fall, towards the end of the fall. There's just a lot of processes they have to go through to get that.
And I just want to make it clear, y'all know I'm in Baton Rouge a lot, and I happen to be with Brother Gaines, and you know him. He's the head man on the Democratic side, and let me tell you something. Everybody that we speak to asks the question, where is that man from? So he'll tell you, Crowley. Everybody respects John. From the guy walking through the doors to some of the senators, the congressmen, that legislators that are retired. I just want to tell you, man, the best thing ever happened to Crowley. You're following in the tradition of John Bro and just everybody. John. So I just want to tell you, man, and if anybody knows, you know I know.
Well, I appreciate it. Look, it's, again, I'll go back to it. It's an honor to represent my hometown, probably like a lot of y'all feel. You know, it's just it's a cool ability to be able to be in this position, and when you can do good things, and when, you know, look, I ran as a fiscal conservative. That is part of I'm always trying to look at how to best maximize our tax dollars even on a state level. But at the same time, our community in Crowley has needs like everybody else around the state. And if there's gonna be money divvied up, I'm gonna fight for every single dollar to come here and to come back to this parish, and I'll never be ashamed to do that. So I'm gonna keep doing that. Thank y'all so much. Give me a call if I can ever help. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, next is Mr. Stephen Sawyer, Bass Limited. Mr. Martin, I think you had asked him to be on the agenda.
Yes, I did. Let's go ahead.
Well, Mayor, members of the council, my name is Stephen Sawyer. I'm representing Bass Companies. I'm here to ask the council to reconsider the variance for 2 sign locations in the city of Crowley. There's been a little bit of misunderstanding on exactly what the priorities were with the city as far as developing businesses, helping existing businesses do their advertising. There's a little conflict, I believe, because I've been told by Mr. Fogelman that he doesn't want to have it because there's a new neighborhood coming, and that's the reason why he doesn't want other property owners to benefit from that. And I just didn't find that a reasonable objection. So I've been very persistent. As far as the sign itself, if there's any questions y'all need, I'm glad to tell you the lighting is not an issue because it's lower than the on-premise sign lightings. It goes from 10,000 nits, which is like 10,000 watts, I guess you could explain it, down to 7,500 for on-premise, off-premise sign billboards. And at nighttime, it dims down to 750 nits versus 1,000 on regular billboard digital signs that are in the city. So lighting is not more. The second thing is billboards actually bring attention and awareness to its surroundings. So there's less accidents. And and if people get a chance to see the messages and read it and increase sales. There was a study in Sacramento that brought in $28 million by the addition of 8 digital billboards in sales tax and revenue. So it benefits the city greatly, and I'm just here to answer any questions y'all want and ask y'all to reconsider it.
Mr. Martin?
Okay, you want to repeat what you said when you spoke to Councilman Fogarty? You told me-
Councilman Fogelman told me that the reason why he was against it is because there was going to be a development, and he was for that development of the neighborhood behind there, and that he did not want to let Limco have a billboard location.
That is not true.
Yes, sir.
You are lying.
Sir, I'm not here to lie. I'm here to tell you what you
are
told me.
falsifying a statement, and I am not gonna sit here and allow you to do it.
I'm not here.
Well,
Ms.
you know
Fogelman,
what?
I have different
You
memories.
don't need to pull me into your mess. I told you I was not in favor of it, period.
And you gave me
You
the
are
reason.
lying.
You gave me the reason. Don't call me a liar, sir.
I am gonna call
You
you
gave me
a
a
liar
reason.
publicly.
You gave me the reason. I'm saying publicly also. I'm not here to argue with you.
No,
I'm here to
for
say
the
that's
third
what you
party.
said.
What's in it for him?
What's in it for me?
Sir, order, please,
Okay,
order,
wait, he asked-
order, order,
Okay,
order.
don't point at me. but-
Thank you, order,
No, I'm not going to, you know what?
order, please.
Ooh, Lord.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
Sonia,
apologize.
Mr. Sonia.
I had a misunderstanding, but that's what you told me, in my opinion.
Mr. Sonier, thank you, we appreciate this, and I appreciate you coming and requesting. If you don't mind,
Next time.
I will check with legal and making sure, if you want to go through the process again, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have to submit it again through code enforcement and go through the planning commission. We'll confirm that. If you call my office tomorrow, I'll have an answer for you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
If I may, Mayor.
Yes, sir, you may, Mr.
I
Martin.
apologize to you, but, I want to say it right here, and, Lord Fogelman,
Yes, I'm sitting right here, Steph.
you with your little faggot ways. Let me tell you something.
Order again. Chief,
Next time.
Chief, I
Call
want
me
him
out.
removed now,
Do it then.
now,
Be a man and do it.
now.
Call me out right now. No, good shit.
There's something in
Remain,
No, there's something in it for you. Okay? That's what we found out about it. There's something in it for you.
now,
Okay? Are you
please,
representing
Chief.
the guys? Oh, man, every time this man, he just, oh, Lord. But it's coming, bro.
Mr. Mayor, this was not my intention at all. Bass is a
Okay.
wonderful.
It's all right, Mr. Sonier,
Okay.
I will get with you in the morning.
Okay.
If you don't mind, call me, and we'll leave it at that, and I'll make sure that we do it properly and legally.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is enough of this. Oh, hell. Holy no. When you go to the balls, you come
You
outside.
just shut the meeting, goodbye.
No, when you go to the balls, you come on outside.
You know where I am.
I know where you're at.
You know where I am.
Okay, and I'll be waiting for you.
You great son of a bitch.
Oh, Lord.
Order.
What did he just say? What did he just say? What did he just say?
Order.
Repeat what you just said. No, yeah, you need to. No, I didn't hear you.
I will.
Why? Yeah, bring him outside. Bring him outside. Bring him outside.
Please remove.
Yeah, bring him outside.
Who's on zoning and annexation?
I am, but I don't know if
What?
I'm
Turn him
going
outside.
to read for
I
it.
think he's second.
Oh,
Order. All right. Now we will shortly, excuse me 1 second. We'll call for a recess.
Thank you.
I don't think they need more people out.
No.
Lena, you back?
No, it's not.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna get out of here, okay, good luck.
All right, thank you, Representative. Miss Julie, if you could round everybody up and have them come back in so we can resume the meeting, please. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, we have a 4. Yes.
Do we ever look good in the
Okay.
public's eye?
We didn't officially call for recess, but anyway, since it got interrupted, we're going to continue and we're gonna open public hearing. I'm gonna move the public hearing around. We have a proposed ordinance, and I'm gonna start with C. There's a proposed ordinance number 1523, an ordinance to amend and reenact section 1030, division 1.5 sewer, and an ordinance to amend and reenact, an ordinance to amend and reenact section 1030, division 1.5 sewer service user fee charges of Article 2 of Chapter 10 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Crowley to increase the sewer user fees and charges set forth therein, to repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances contrary thereto or in conflict therewith, to provide for the provisions hereof to be severable, and to provide for all matters relative thereto. Now call on opponents, please. Call number 1. Call number 2. Call number 3. Now ask for proponents. Call number 1. Call number 2. Call number 3. Since there are no further from the information from the public, we now close public hearing. Close public hearing on this particular item, 1523. We'll now proceed with proposed ordinance. Letter A, we'll open up public hearing. Proposed ordinance number 1521, an ordinance amending the budgets for the City of Crowley. Hang on, let me make sure I got the right one. Okay. Yes, amending the budgets for the City of Crowley for the fiscal year beginning September 1st, 2020 and ending August 31st, 2021, and to provide all matters relative thereto, and to repeal all ordinance or parts of ordinance inconsistent or in conflict therewith. So I'll ask anyone from the public, any opponents? Call number 1. Call number 2. Call number 3. Proponents? Call number 1. Call number 2. Call number 3. Is there no further information coming from the public? We will close number 1521. We will now we'll open public hearing for proposed, on letter B, proposed ordinance number 1522. An ordinance adopting, finalizing, and implementing the annual operating budgets of revenues and expenditures for the City of Crowley for the fiscal year beginning September 1st, 2021 and ending August 31st, 2022, and to provide for all matters relative thereto, and to repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent or in conflict therewith. Opponents, call number 1. Yes, sir, please state your name.
Rick Villagewin, live at 515 East Jeanette. First of all, to the mayor, Mr. Cavell, and Mr. Absher, kudos on putting y'all's time into this budget. I know a lot of it was done after hours, a lot of it was done on the weekends. Thank y'all very much for y'all service to the city. However, I do not have necessarily an issue with what is in the budget. My issue is what is not in the budget. The proposed budget, excuse me. And that is the actual estimations on what was spent this past year. Every other budget has actual money that was spent in each line item. You cannot know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. To say that there's increases and decreases on each line item, you as a council do not know if those increases and decreases are warranted, justified, or enough in either direction, unless you know how much was actually spent in each line item. So I would encourage you to vote no on this budget until you are given all of the information that you need to make an educated decision. Thank you.
Any other opponents? Call number 1, call number 2, call number 3. Thank you. Proponents? Call number 1, call number 2, call number 3. Thank you. Since there's no further public comment, we will close number 1522. Now close the public hearing. We will reconvene the meeting. Are there any agenda amendments? If none, approval of the minutes. Regular council meeting held on July 14th, 2021. Special council meeting held on July 28th, 2021. And special council meeting held on August 2nd, 2021. That's for a motion.
So moved.
Offered by Mr. Cavell. Seconded by Mr. Cord. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. On the mayor's report, there is a sales tax chart, 2.5 on the sales tax. It looked like we're about 600,000 ahead of a percent increase, and hopefully if everything continues, we should be, we were projecting a few months back about $1.1 million. We hope and pray, and we'd like to thank all of the citizens of Crowley and all the visitors who patronize all of our businesses. Thank you very much. In the user fee chart, we have a 26% increase, and if we have another good month, we're going to be pretty close to last year's, if not a little bit above. Very good. All right, standing committees, we'll move right along.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Question. What's the status of the financial reports for last month and this month?
Oh, the budget analysis?
The financial reports that are given to the council members monthly.
We are still upgrading our computer system. We are still in that transition, and we do not have that particular accurate report for you at this time.
So those numbers aren't available, and I would assume they wouldn't be available for you to prepare the budget, not having those numbers available the last couple of months.
Yes, sir. There were some numbers available, but not the entire financial report.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Standing committee reports, Public Works Committee, Mr. Crater.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Works Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers, and a quorum was present. Under action items, a motion was offered by Byron Woolridge and seconded by Alderman Brad Cord to approve partial payment estimate number 13 to Southern Constructors Incorporated for the citywide drainage improvements project in the amount of $129,440.56. And that motion carried, and I so moved.
I'm sorry, okay, thank you, Mr. Woolridge. Offered by Mr. Crater, seconded by Mr. Woolridge. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
A motion was offered by Alderman Woolridge and seconded by Alderman Cord to approve partial payment estimate number 5 to Triton Construction LLC for the city-owned parking lot improvements project in an amount of $97,185.97. That motion carried and I so move.
Offered by Mr. Grader, seconded by Mr. Woolridge. Discussion? Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, is it possible if we could, along with these approval of partial payments, if we could have a total of where we are with all of those along with it? Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
A motion was offered by myself and seconded by Alderman Byron Wheelridge to award contracts for the fiscal year 2021-2022 materials purchases based on the official bid tabulation prepared by Mader Engineering Incorporated. That motion carried and I so move.
Second.
Offered by Mr. Grader, seconded by Mr. Core. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The Public Works, under non-action items, the Public Works Director, Mr. Albert John, presented his monthly report. Street Commissioner Gilbert Ozine presented his monthly report. And City Engineer, Mr. Tim Mader, presided his monthly engineering report. There was no further business to come before the Public Works Committee, and that committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Grader. Next is utility. Mr. Reggie, would you convene? Thank you.
Utility Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers. A quorum was present. Under action items, there were none. Under non-action items, wastewater superintendent Tim Prater presented the monthly wastewater report. City engineer Tim Mader presented the monthly engineer's report, and there's no further business to come before Utility Committee, and the committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Reggie, for filling in. Next is Recreation Committee, Mr. Primo.
Thank you, Mayor. Recreation Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th. Under action items, there were none. Under non-action items, Peter Kirsch, Recreation Director, presented the monthly Recreation Department report. Included in his report were his findings on the cost for construction of a 1,500 square foot splash pad by Rain Deck. The option for a freshwater splash pad would cost $155,000. The option for a recirculating splash pad would cost $175,000. The director also noted there is a 50-50 match grant through the Lieutenant Governor's office that, if received, could assist the city with the cost of construction. Application deadline for the grant is April 1, 2022. Tim Mader, city engineer, presented his monthly engineer's report. There was no further business to come before the Recreation Committee, and the committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Primo. Next is Zoning and Annexation, Mr. Stringfellow. Or is it Stephen? Stephen, I'm sorry. Mr. Primo is the vice chair. Apologize, Ms. Stringfellow.
Okay. Zoning and Annexation Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. Under action items, a motion was offered by Alderman Lyle Fogelman and seconded by Alderman Stephen Primo to recommend the following: the approval of the annexation and C3 zoning of the following described property. That certain tract or parcel of land being the westernmost 1.7 acres, more or less, of a 4.307 acre tract shown as Tract A, located in Section 29, T9, Range 1 East, Acadia Parish, Louisiana, as per plat of survey prepared by Ryan P. Hebert, PLS, dated 5/3/2021. Said 1.7 acres being bounded on the north by VFW Drive, south by Theodore Carmichael or Assigns, east by the corporate limits of the city of Crowley, and west by Theodore Carmichael or Assigns, contingent upon the approval of the city attorney and city engineer. And 2, the approval of the rezoning from R1 to C3, a triangular tract of land being 1.2 acres more or less, and being a portion of Tract A located in Section 29, T9, Range 1E, Acadia Parish, Louisiana, as per plat of survey prepared by Ryan P. Hebert, POS, dated 5/3/2021, contingent upon the approval of the city attorney and city engineer.
Mr. Primo, before you go any
Yes.
further, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there was a discrepancy, and I would ask for a motion to table this particular item.
Yes, I was aware of that, and that's what I was gonna do, so I would move to table this to, would this come back to committee next month, or?
It will have to go before, planning and commission again.
Okay, then come back to us.
Yes, sir.
So I would make a motion to table tonight.
Second.
Offered by Mr. Primo, seconded by, I didn't hear, I'm sorry, Mr. Cavell. Discussion? Yes, Mr.
Can somebody explain to the rest of the council what's going on here? 'Cause we
Yes.
have no idea what this is all about.
Yes,
Let me,
go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I could, Mr. Reagan and I spoke about it this afternoon. I didn't realize this is what Lyle was gonna table. The notices, Mr. Reagan said, had incomplete wording. There were 2 recommendations, and then they left something out that somebody caught. Tom didn't catch it, but somebody brought it to his attention, that the way it was advertised is not the way it was going to be dealt with, and so it has to be redone through planning and zoning, zoning and planning.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, Ms. Stringfellow?
Thank you, Mayor. So just for clarification, it has to go all the way back to the Planning Commission,
Yes, ma'am.
and it'll be on their agenda
Yes, ma'am.
later this month.
That is
Is
correct.
that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Mr. Primo?
So also the certified letters need to be sent out again to the
That is-
property owners, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is correct. Everything has to start over. Yes, ma'am?
That's another thing, the certified letters were sent out already before we knew about this to table it. And if we could just, is it possible that we could have some type of email when a certified letter with all of our names on it is sent out? Because, you know, my name is on it and I didn't know anything about it. And if people, yes, it's on our letterhead with the entire council's
Oh,
name
I
on it.
understand, but it's a process that we have to.
I know, but can we just be given a heads up? Because, you know, if there's a letterhead sent out with my name on it and someone calls me and says, what is this? Your name is on it. I don't know what it is.
Well, for us to be able to, we have to send you an email on every transaction, because every transaction that we conclude business
Only
has our letterhead.
only to citizens and something that, you know, we're gonna be voting on.
No, you asked me if I could send an email, I'm just saying, I know it has your name on the letterhead because you're an elected
Well, it's,
official.
yeah, and it's a registered letter to
It's a-
citizens, so if
Absolutely,
that.
and we have to because that's state statute.
Right, I mean, it just, a little heads up is all, you know, requesting, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right, all in favor? Opposed, thank you.
A motion was offered by Alderman Lyle Fogelman and seconded by Alderman Vernon Martin to recommend the preliminary plat re-subdivide of property at the request of David Bratton, Dixie Field Property, LLC, described as located at Rice Capitol Parkway, Lot 8, Lot 9, and Lot 10, as shown on the preliminary plat submitted, contingent upon approval of the city attorney and city engineer. Motion carried, and I so move.
Offered by Mr. Primo, seconded by Mr. Krieger. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Under non-action items, city engineer Tim Mader presented his monthly engineer's report. There was no further business to come before zoning and annexation, and the committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Primo. Next is public safety, Mr. Core.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Safety Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers. A quorum was present. A motion was offered by the chair and seconded by Alderwoman Kim Stringfellow, proposing an ordinance amendment to section 4-17A of the Crowley, City of Crowley Code of Ordinances to change the time period for impounded animals from 10 days to 5 days to promote quicker adoption of animals and free up much needed kennel space within the animal shelter. The motion passed, and I so move.
Offered by Mr. Core, seconded by Ms. Stringfellow. And again, this is just to set a date. If you look, you have a resolution in your packet, and the date that of the public hearing is going to be on the 8th day of September at 6 p.m. Offered by Mr. Core, seconded by Ms. Stringfellow. Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
On our non-action items, an update was provided by representatives of Citizens Against Blight, referred to as CAB, Emily Stolman, chairman, and Rich Hughes, member. Ms. Stolman reported a total of 63 structures have been removed from their list, and 76 have been given to code enforcement to address. Mr. Hughes announced CAB has received its designation as a 501c3 organization. He also shared information regarding a consulting service that assists municipalities and parishes with inspections and permits. Chief Jimmy Broussard presented the police department report. Fire Chief Louis Romero was out of town, and the mayor announced Chief Romero will give his report at the regular monthly council meeting next week. Code Enforcement Officer Tony Duhan's report was read by the chair. There was no further action to come before the Public Safety Committee, and the committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Core. Under public buildings, Mr. Woolridge.
Before I begin, I'd like to apologize to the audience, because this is not the way the city of Crowley is supposed to be acting. We take a job to come do, and we should leave all this personal stuff outside the door. I don't know what's going on, but as city councilmen, we need to get together, right? This don't make no sense, that this gonna be all over the paper and the news for the city of Crowley. And that's all the laughing stock of the state of Louisiana. But that's all I want to say before I get into public.
Thank you, Mr. Woolridge.
Public business convened on Wednesday, August the 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. at the council's chamber. A quorum was present. On the action item, a motion was offered by Alderman Vernon Martin and seconded by Alderman Clint Crater to approve the request for Beta Sigma Phi Ada Kappa Chapel for the city to co-sponsor the annual Miss Merry Christmas pageant on Wednesday, November 17th and Thursday, November 18th, from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. each night at the Rice Festival Building, and further for the city to Crowley to waive the rental fees, waive the rental fees, also building but not the cleanup fees. Motion carried, and I so move.
Offered by Mr. Woolridge, seconded by Ms. Stringfellow.
I
Discussion?
just got one question with this. They want to rent, or they want to use the Rice Festival building, MA Kids Center. They don't make no difference what the public building is. But are they still required to have insurance if somebody else get hurt on our city property? That's what I need to find out.
Okay. All right, we'll have that answer for you. We can make it contingent upon.
Because months ago, they had to have their own private insurance. If somebody was break a leg, they ain't suing the city. And that's what we need to find out. Yeah, waiving the rental fee and all that is fine. But we don't want the city to take responsibility for somebody getting hurt on our property.
Okay.
There were no action items. There was no further.
I'm sorry, hold on, that's okay. Offered by Mr. Woodward, seconded by Ms. Stringfellow. Any further discussion? And Mr. Cavell.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, I have to abstain from this. My wife belongs to this sorority.
Okay, Mr. Primo?
Mayor, I have to do the same. My wife belongs to the same sorority.
Okay, make the record known that they're abstaining their vote. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? There's 5 of you, so I need to, we're all ayes? Okay, all right, great, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Woodridge, I'm sorry.
No other actions. There was no further business to come before the Public Business Committee. The committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Woodridge. Next is Insurance and Personnel, Ms. Stringfellow.
Thank you, Mayor. The Insurance and Personnel Committee convened last week. We had a quorum. There were no discussion items and there were no action items.
You said something? No, you're okay. Thank you. Next, Community and Economic Development, Mr. Reggie.
Thank you, Mayor. Community and Economic Development Committee convened Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers. A quorum was present. Under action items, there are none. Under non-action items, Dr. Sawyer Proctor addressed the committee regarding an upcoming back-to-school readiness seminar and school supply backpack giveaway to be held Friday, August 13th at 6 p.m. under the pavilion at the MLK Center. The event is sponsored by the National Association of University Women and other community partners in education. Dr. Proctor also provided a push, pray until something happens update. The prayer group is meeting via telephone conference call, and the next call dedicated to children and teachers will be Monday, August 9th at 5:30 p.m. I presented the reports for Tourism Director Valerie Myers, Crowley Main Street Director Jamie Morrison, and Acadia Parish Chamber of Commerce CEO Amy Thibodeau. There was no further business to come before Community and Economic Development Committee, and the committee recessed.
Thank you, Mr. Reggie. Next, Revenue and Finance, Mr. Cavell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Revenue and Finance Committee convened on Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chamber. The quorum was present. There were no action items, nor were there any non-action items. There was no business coming before the Revenue and Finance Committee. After that, the committee then recessed.
Thank you. Engineers report, Mr. Mader.
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mader. All right, next, number 12, resolution. Oh, I apologize. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Mr. George, is Mr. George still here? Mr. George, I apologize. It is my fault. I was supposed to call you up in public safety. If you could come up, sir, I apologize. Please state your name, sir. Can you press that button for me?
I got you.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher George. I agree with you, Councilman Rich. We need to get ourselves together because I spoke last month about being on the news, so we'll get it together. But I'm here to talk about a few things. One thing is about perception. I believe it's everybody's perception of how you see things is right. So I decided to wear this. This is my daily.
You're okay.
But last month I wore a suit. So I wore this to say I attained a degree in criminal justice and I graduated top of my class at cum laude. So would you believe last month, Chris, or how I look now that I have a degree? Perception. That's what I want to get to you. So, having a degree, I believe that community policing is one of the most important things that we have to do. So, I decided to reach out to some community people and that have influence over the youth that's committing these crimes, and I asked them to do like a 90-day ceasefire. Chief, I don't know if you've been having calls, but I guess it's working. So I decided to use my platform and everything, my resources, my education to reach out, again, because I believe community policing is the most effective way to handle these problems. And And also, Chief, I want to thank you for bringing accountability to the parents, because as I spoke, I believe that's where it needs to start, with the parents. I thank you. I read the article about you holding the parents accountable, so I really appreciate that. And council, I want to thank you also for bringing the public's voice back to these meetings, because I believe the public voice is very important in these meetings, and it should not be muzzled or filtered out. So I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart, and that's it, I think. So again, we have to do better. It starts from the head. Y'all are our minds, so the heart can be right. Please, I'm tired. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of looking KATC and KLFY. So we need to do better. I don't know what that looks like, but we need to do better. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. George.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. George, again, I apologize for not calling you up sooner. Thank you again for coming and giving your message. We appreciate it. All right, next is resolutions. Resolution of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Crowley, Katy Parish, Louisiana, introducing a proposed ordinance and calling for a public hearing to turn an ordinance to amend and reenact sections 417 and 418, Article 1 of Chapter 4 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Crowley, to reduce the required number of days of impoundment and detention of animals and livestock from 10 days to 5 days, except for animals impounded for injuries to persons or rabies or fear of cats, to repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances contrary thereto or in conflict therewith, to provide for the provisions hereof, to be severable, and to provide for all matters relative thereto. I know we did discuss that earlier, and we did vote. I would like to do it again, please, on this particular resolution. Someone to offer it?
I would like to offer it there.
Offered by Mr. Coors, seconded by Ms. Stringfellow, and again, this is a set of date, and we've already know the date. And, any other discussion? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next we're gonna move into the ordinances, and we're gonna consider ordinance number 1523, an ordinance to amend and reenact section 1030, division 1.5 sewer service user fee charges of Article 2 of Chapter 10, the Code of Ordinances of the City of Crowley, to increase the sewer user fees and charges set forth therein, to repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances contrary thereto or in conflict therewith, to provide for the provision hereof, to be severable, and to provide for all matters relative thereto. Ask someone to offer a motion to adopt this ordinance. Mr. Cavell?
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Offered by Mr. Cavell. Second, offered by Mr. Primo, seconded by Mr. Primo. Discussion. Mr. Crater?
Yes, Mayor, are the representatives here from Louisiana Rural Water Association?
Yes, sir. Mr. Ken Terry is here.
I have some questions I'd like to ask.
Absolutely.
If I would be allowed to.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Mr. Ken Terry?
Yes, sir.
Hi, I appreciate you coming, I really, really do.
No problem.
So I just have a list of a few questions here, and I'd like to clear it up, but why was 100% of the depreciation of $1.14 million used last year, and only 10% or 105,000 used this year? Was there a reason for that?
To try to cut down the user rate, it would be pretty astronomically high if we used the full amount.
Well, we were almost told that it was almost criminal, I guess, if we didn't use 100% of the depreciation last year, and I was really surprised that only 105,000. So it's not, so we can use any amount of the depreciation?
As far as I'm aware, you can.
Wow, okay.
That would,
See, the thing is, if we'd have used the 10% last year, the deficit to obtain the 1.1 ratio would have only been $97,000 instead of the $1.something million we were told. So instead of a 67% increase, or whatever that crazy number was, it would have only been maybe 5%, I guess, something like that. So, and that was without a whole year of the 20% increase we had. So I think if we'd have been very, very close, if not okay, if we'd have only used 10%. But
depreciation, as far as the legality of it, I'm not aware of that, so.
Okay, well, thank you. Look, that's why I'm so glad you came. Okay, the study this year has a wish list from the wastewater director, and that's added into your study.
Yes.
And it was $400,000, so if we don't approve the $400,000, then we'll meet the 1.1% ratio, no problem. And if we approve $188,368.50 of the wish list, we still don't have to raise the rate because we'll still be within your 1.1%. That rate has 3 employees, a tractor, a cutter, 2 trucks. That would be $195,000 if we did that. But it also has 2 generators and 5 pumps. And if we got a grant for that instead of tacking that on to this sewer user fee, then we'd still be okay with the 1.1% ratio that you require. So it just surprised me about this deal, but if I guess if the mayor's not willing to pursue a grant for the $211,000 equipment that's on the list, or use $211,000 from the COVID relief fund or something like that, then in order for us to get the 1.6 million grant, we have to go up on our user fee. Is that correct? I mean, that's pretty much.
You have to be a sustainable system, yes, sir.
Yeah. And that's because of the $400,000 that we added for the wish list that we haven't approved yet. The 3 people, the 2 trucks, the pumps, we've never heard that before. This is the first time when it came on this list that we heard that stuff was required. But you've cleared things up immensely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Stringfellow?
Thank you, Mayor. So you said we have to meet that 1-to-1, right? Or
Yes.
1.1. So if we put 200,000 in there, then we meet it, you said? No, we don't, okay.
We could approve.
Mr. Crater?
The thing is, Kim, if we approve $188,000, so the deficit right now is $211,000 with the $400,000 in it.
Right.
So if we approve $200,000, we're still okay. Because that would put us right on the line. If we don't approve anything, we're really okay, but if we could actually approve
If we don't
$188,000.
approve anything, though, we don't get the grant. If we don't approve a rate increase, we don't get the grant. But if we approve a smaller percentage of a rate increase, then we will get the grant. Is that what I'm understanding?
If we approve less of the $400,000 wish list, then we still meet the 1.1 ratio and we still get the grant.
If I may, and Mr. Mayor, you can chime in at any time. If I may, I know that Mr. Crater keeps talking about a wish list, but the sustainability factor is all because of it's all because of our depreciation that is needed, am I correct?
Right, and that is to help offset some of the, only doing 10% of the depreciation. And as far as a wish list, I was kind of under the impression too, that these are items that are immensely needed. I mean, for down this low in the country, with needing generators, the pumps I think are pretty important. You need there. The maintaining of the system with the tractor and stuff like that. But those items were a needed list that we had, that we worked off of.
Ms. Stringfellow?
Thank you, Mayor. How many extra employees do we have on that wish list? 3, and I think they were down 2, from what I understand, last meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Crater? Yes, he's shaking his head. Okay.
Mr. Crater, is that number she's stating is correct? I think you're short people.
We're currently short 2 on staff. The 3 people that we need is to fulfill the obligation of the smoke testing program that's required by DEQ.
Okay. And that comes in along with that 1.6 million. Am I not correct? that would also come along with that $1.6 million grant that we're applying for as well.
I believe it is, sir, I'm not for sure, but I think so.
All right. Mr. Cord?
Couple of questions. The expenses that are given to you, or how do you receive the expenses from the wastewater to arrive at your sustainability factor? Is that something that's just provided to you?
The audit.
The audit,
The
okay.
audit.
And so the audit would be from this fiscal year's operations, correct?
Was for the fiscal year of 2020, yes.
Yes, the one we're currently in,
Wait, yes.
or the previous one. Yeah, right, correct.
The previous, the
Right,
last,
Audited year.
Yes.
last audit year,
Okay,
yes.
so if you're using that, how can you incorporate potential expenses that have not been reflected in the audit?
These are expenses that are gonna be occurring, so they are an estimated cost. We take the audited thing, your audit as your expenses, and then where you were shortfall, we went with this to take in that audit was also a 1.6 million depreciation, which we didn't use all of that. So this was part of that to help keep that depreciation number down.
So that's part of what your firm does as far as doing the calculations.
We just did the calculations.
Right, based on the information that's provided to you.
That's
So
true, that is correct.
You don't fact check what's actually in. For instance, we became aware of these, we call wish lists, and I don't want to demean the need for those items, but during this fiscal year, we have not heard from our wastewater director by needing the tractor and some other items. So it just concerns me that all of a sudden those are necessary or vital items to continue when we haven't heard that before. But that's not, I guess, something that you were aware of.
Right, those numbers were given to us, and it's not uncommon when we do this to get a list. Now, when you knew about it, that's beyond me.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I guess the next item regarding expenses, and this may be for the auditor or our CPA to determine, expenses, the wastewater operation expenses. We learned last week that some of the equipment, personnel, and materials utilized in wastewater is also utilized to do street type services as far as cleaning out culverts. And I guess the question I have is, should that expense be deducted from wastewater operations and applied to the street department and not burden the citizens with a higher sewer user fee based on inflated expenses for items that were not related directly to wastewater?
That would be
Yes, sir, for the auditor or the CPA. All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Cabell?
I think I can answer that. I mean, that means you can transfer any cost from one department to the next to make the one department look better, such as taking out depreciation, making the bottom line look better.
You can do it opposite.
So,
Yep, I just want, questions in my mind that I'd like to have answered.
All right.
Why don't I ask you, sir? Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Canteri?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canteri.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You really cleared it up.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Mr. Primo?
Thank you. I would just, either whether it's Mr. Mayor or you, Mayor, I would just like for it to be clarified that if this is voted down, will the smoke testing be able to be done in the city?
No, sir.
You won't have $1.6 million to do it. You'll have to find the money in the budget, the utility department to do it. And that's to satisfy promises you made to DEQ and EPA for the last 15 years to address I&I problems.
Thank you.
Mr. Cabell?
Mr. J. Delafield, if you don't mind.
Those of you who don't know, this is Mr. J. Delafield, our bond attorney, Mr. J.
Yes, sir.
Delafield.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. if you could just explain to the council and to the public what the ramifications, legally with respect to our bond and DEQ if such a rate is not approved?
The obligation that you've undertaken with the issuance of the bonds in 2013 from DEQ is to have sufficient revenues in the system to maintain, operate, and provide for debt service on the bonds, and to have enough money in reserve over and above the actual debt service obligation by 10%. That's where the 1.1% or 110% is actually 110% of debt service. If you don't do that, you're in default. Now, I've spoken with the lawyer that represents DEQ. His name is David Wolf. He's with Adams and Reese in New Orleans. And they know about the difficulties that the council has encountered with respect to these rate increases. I don't know what they will do. In the event that DEQ says we're in default for failing to increase rates, we will be notified of the default. The next series of bonds that we do for streets and drainage would have to reflect a declared default on our existing indebtedness. We would have to disclose that to the bond buying public. As a result of that disclosure, we will pay a premium dollar in interest rates on future bonds that we issue, and we will have to disclose that default at least for a 10-year period, at the very least for a 10-year period. It's expensive.
Thank you.
Mr. Inco?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Delafield, was this information given to the previous administration?
No, ma'am, I was just notified of your issue with respect to the rate increase about a year ago. It was not given to the previous administration, to my knowledge, because it was never raised.
And so there was no problem with the bond issue?
I mean, there was no problem with the bond issue. The difficulty's only arisen as a result of the controversy over the sewer user fees, and that has gotten out to DEQ.
Okay, I'm just a little confused on that.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Delafield? Mr. Creighton?
So were you under the impression that we had to use the 100% of the depreciation, the $1.something million? And now we're only, were you aware of that? I think you were here at those meetings and you heard it. I don't know why somebody didn't step up and say, oh no, that's not true. We don't have to use 100%. Y'all don't have to use $1 million depreciation and raise the sewer user fee up 67%. We were chastised. We were actually chastised in this chamber because we didn't want to raise the sewer user fee up 67%, and we questioned why we had to use $1 million depreciation.
Without becoming too political for you, in September of 2013, the Securities Exchange Commission, because of acts of Congress over the last housing debacle arising in 2008, said that we bond lawyers can no longer give you financial advice. Prior to 2013, I had been giving financial advice to all my clients. I'm no longer allowed to do so. So with respect to commenting upon the depreciation issue is financial advice. I'm not allowed to give you that. Only your auditor or a registered municipal advisor can give you that information.
No further?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. J. All right. Who was first? Go ahead. Just looked up, Mr. Inco.
Thank you, and I'd just like to say that this is why I voted no on the grant, because it's contingent on this. So that's probably the only time I'll ever vote no on a grant, so.
Mr. Coyle?
Mayor, the 4.6 million American Cover Act funds, of which I think the city received half of that yesterday, I'm not sure.
Not that I'm familiar with.
I know Jennings received
that's
theirs, who was sending this part. But nonetheless, can a portion of the 50%, the 2.3 million that can be expected, be utilized to fund some of these, again, I want to refer as a wish list, but these other items that, instead of burdening the citizens with that higher of a sewer user fee increase?
That I can't answer because I haven't gotten all the definitive specifics on the usage of that.
Well, it's clear that they can be used for sewer and water. That is very,
Somewhat, yes, sir, somewhat, I agree,
it's-
I agree with you, but there are stipulations that are clear as well, but I have not gotten the specifics on it.
when, and who's providing that to you? And when can we see what you've been given?
I have contacted a number of people, the Treasury Department, the LMA, and other people.
It's just interesting because other municipalities like Lafayette and Jennings are moving
Well,
forward, they have
they
a
are
plan.
also, and Jennings is not, I'm not saying that they are different rules of government, but I'm not saying that that is the reason why we have not. We have not, Rain has not, Lafayette, I think, is home rule charter, and I think Jennings is as well, correct?
Yes, they
Okay.
are,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, it's federal money.
I
It's
understand
coming
that,
to-
but whether, when they received it, we haven't received those specifics. Mr. Mayor Robichaud hasn't received his either.
But,
And I've been in contact with him as well.
but again, they can be used for this purpose, if I'm not mistaken, and can we
Without
find
me
out?
getting more specific and getting legal counsel on that to make sure to answer your question, I cannot answer that at this moment.
Mr. Howard, would you know by chance?
I know that there are some explanations out there. I haven't personally read them, but I know they're there, and so I can't give you an answer tonight. Maybe Mr. Mayor can.
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
You know, we're in a catch-22 because you can't get any of that 4.6 million unless you pass the LRWA rates. That's in the regulations. And I reported that to you all last month.
Okay. Mr. Grader?
So I guess if we increase this rate, last time I checked, we had $1.7 million in the utility fund. So if we increase this rate, are we assured that none of that money is going to be transferred out of the utility department and put somewhere else?
The money of the user rate goes into the utility department, and it stays in the utility department. It always has been in the utility department, and it always will be in the utility department. Yes, sir.
What about the property tax millage that,
That is a dedication, you can't
that
touch
also goes
it. You
for
can't
that
touch
too?
it. That is
No, I
a
understand.
dedication.
Right.
You cannot touch it, even as a council.
Sure.
That is a dedication, and it's specifically is for utility.
Right. For utility or wastewater?
That's utility, wastewater. That's in your budget, if you look at it. heading up
Yes,
the top,
yeah,
it's
just to
utility.
clarify.
Yes, sir.
A couple of points of clarification, and we bring up the wish list. The pumps that are listed on that wish list are not a one-time deal. What happens when we get a pump, we got a, say, a lift station here at Parkinson and Mill Street, it has 2 pumps in there. That station takes care of the majority of South Crowley, okay? If one pump goes down, I should have one to put in its place to keep that system operating. If that system, that one pump goes down, and I have nothing to put in its place, we're operating on a wing and a prayer with that one pump. If that pump by itself goes down, then I have to install or contact someone about putting the pump system in there to keep it running. Additional cost. Rental manpower to sit there and make sure it's operating 24 hours, you know, at a time. It will not connect to a SCADA system where we can operate. As far as employees that are on there, it would be a big addition to us because I can allocate those employees to handle sections of the city. We do smoke test now, but not like we should, or inadequate areas. We have smoke tested in certain problem areas, with complete subdivisions, and pinpointed those problems and corrected the majority of them, 95% of them. Vehicles, you know, we talked about this, I would probably say a couple of years ago,
Some of the vehicles we have, 200,000+ miles, we take care of, you know. In time, it's gonna happen. There are other things in the foreseeable future that were not put on that wish list, as far as valves at the plant that will need to be replaced in the coming future. You know, we try to get as much long life as we can out of them valves. See, somebody listening. We try to get as much use of those valves, we exercise them as often as we can. But in time, them valves are 25+ years old, and they're not cheap. You know, the last valve we had to replace, that was $18,000. You know, and it's not no little spin valve, these things are big as me. And it's not small. But anyway.
Mr. Grader?
And Mr. Crater, don't misconstrue what we're trying to say here. We're not saying that you don't need this stuff and we don't want to give it to you. We're saying that there's a very, 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 very good possibility that there are grants out there that would help get you what you need instead of putting the burden on the citizens. That's all we're saying here. I mean, we know for a fact that there are grants out there and they're probably going to be coming, you know, available. So once we pass this, it's over. And no matter what grants or whatever we get, you know, we've already passed this for user fee, so we can't, there's no coming back. Hopefully next year when it's reviewed, and if you believe that, I have some beachfront property in Arizona, that we'll be able to go down on the sewer user fee after next year.
And Mr. Grader, Tim Grader, like Mr. Grader saying, yes, there are grants that are available, but they're one time, and can you get them in the amount of time that you need to proceed, whatever you got going on, and if you have breakage, you can't wait on a grant. You need to get it over.
With a grant, there is periods of time that you apply, for example, the recreation grants due in 2022, you know, for that funding from the state. The deadline's 2022, by the time they award it, what, maybe 2023, you know, by the time you receive the funds, 6 months later, you know, because it's just a touch and go situation.
Mr. Cavell?
I'm gonna try to explain like this. Even if we took all the money that was given to us, we start fresh, buy everything new, okay? We would still need a sustainable rate to operate, because then what comes into play is that one thing we keep wanting to deny, and that's depreciation. Because from the first time you buy that piece of equipment, you have to start socking something away that's appropriate per law that's gonna replace that. Like you mentioned, those pumps aren't cheap, but by even depreciation standards, I would say you're looking at a 5 to 10 year makers, right, Rob? Of years to be able to depreciate that pump. So that means you're able to expand that depreciation lifespan over so many years, but it may only last 6 months. So you haven't even allowed yourself to obtain enough money in a reserve fund to replace it. So that's why you have to have such a rate, regardless of what may come in play to continue to operate. Thank you.
I don't know who was next. I'm sorry. I turned my head and I saw hands. Mr. Reggie?
Well, since Tim's up here, Mr. Core mentioned that, which I remember you saying that y'all were cleaning out culverts. Are you billing that through wastewater, or are you billing that through street department?
What I've understood on, since I've gotten there, that a portion of the vehicle, and Rob might be able to help me with that, but I believe that there is split funding, who pays the note as well as the repair costs and everything. But as far as for renting the equipment to them, I'm unaware of anything that I do on my side for that.
I meant like, so let's say they call you up to clean out some culverts. What's your big truck? The big truck
The
shows up.
street department usually comes and they'll call and say, hey, Tim, look, we'll need the truck.
But is that billed through wastewater, or is that billed through street department? Because that's a wastewater item. So, or is the diesel?
The item, I believe, is split.
Split.
I mean, I say, 60-40 or 50-50. I don't know if it's billed, like, if
So
they're gonna.
street department's taking some of the bill for them to use it to clean out the
I would believe so.
Rob, would that be accurate information?
Mr. Rob Carter?
I believe the piece of equipment he's referring to is paid by general fund and utility fund. So it's owned technically by both of them. So each of them are paying a portion of the cost of that vehicle. If it's not being done that way, then there's a transfer from one fund to the other for those costs.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
And how was the depreciation applied to that large truck?
The depreciation would most likely be 100% on the sewer user side.
And I guess this would be more of a CPA duty than the auditor. I mean, I understand your role, and again, it's like Mr. Delafield said, you're not there to provide financial advice. But that would be something that the CPA should be looking at as far as to allocate those expenses accordingly.
Yes, I don't know when the equipment was originally purchased. I do recall seeing it in the past. And there is a small fee transferred to the general fund through a transfer for some of those costs.
And again, you know, any laborers, fuel costs, maintenance, whatever pro rata share,
Should be being charged back to
the street department should use for that purpose. Thank you.
Mr. Crater?
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, Tim, you can say whatever, but I know that when a pump goes out, you don't replace the pump every time it goes out. You send it off and get it repaired. And I was wondering, how much is in the, because looking at the budget again.
Excuse me 1 second, Councilman, all due respect. When a pump goes down, if I have one available, it does go into the hole, if I do have one available.
Yeah, and it gets repaired.
And we send the other one off, that's correct.
Yeah, so you don't have depreciation on it. And I'm just wondering, what is the fund balance, because it's not in here again, of the utility fund? Last I checked, I said, you know, like I said, it was 1.7 million. Do we have that number? Does somebody have that number?
We'll get into that in the budget. Right now, we're on the sewer user fee. Well, you can. Any other questions? Mr. Crater sat down. No more questions from Mr. Crater? Okay. Oh, Mr. Cavell?
I do think there's something that needs to be brought, because it was also brought up in the newspaper, and it was stated in Mr. Reagan's letter of June 21st, that we all had a copy in the packet that Mr. Mayor gave to us. And, you know, it clearly states that our own ordinance, that the rate established herein shall be reviewed annually and shall be revised to reflect the actual cost of administration, operation, maintenance, extension, development, improvement, including debt service, and reserve requirements on any sewage revenue bond of sewage systems. We are required and shall approve this rate. Otherwise, we'll be in violation of our own ordinance. I think we need to kind of take that into consideration.
All right.
So there is our CPA here that maybe could kind of enlighten us on some of this, how he sees the accounting done?
Mr. Asher?
Yes, is he here?
Yes. Okay, what's the question?
Did you hear the discussion just a minute ago with our auditor about how the expenses for wastewater are allocated? For instance, if the wastewater employees, equipment, materials, fuel, so forth, are utilized for something other than wastewater operations, for instance, cleaning out culverts. That expenditure, if it's all associated to the wastewater plant, and that expenditure is used to determine the sustainability factor for the sewer user fee, obviously, it's gonna require a higher sewer user fee than if those expenses were lowered, had they been allocated toward, let's say, the street department.
There
And I guess
are
that's.
allocations made.
So-
Allocations are made based on the usage.
So the depreciation for that large truck is allocated for the pro rata share that's utilized for non-wastewater operations?
Well, as the audit what the auditor just said, depreciation is recorded only in the utility fund because that is an enterprise fund.
Right, but we're talking about utilizing those expenditures to set the sewer user fee that the Louisiana Rural Water, sets the rates at.
But I think he also told you that the cost is split between the utility fund and the general fund. So only the cost that goes to the utility fund is what's depreciated.
Okay, all right.
Makes sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Question, Madam Clerk? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Mayor, while we wait, can we find the fund balance, or?
No, ma'am, I'm waiting to call the question.
Mayor, I ask
Yes,
just
sir.
a, Mayor, just a general question,
Yes.
if you would. If you had a household with 5,000 gallons usage, the current rate versus the proposed rate, can you calculate that real quick? Because we're talking about a rate increase, I know it's $17 monthly minimum and $4 per 1,000 gallons. So if a household would typically use 5,000 gallons, if we could just kind of let the public know what this increase will be if approved.
Yeah, I believe you and I talked about that a
Yes.
few weeks ago. Do you remember the calculation? I don't remember it. I could do it, but I'm not gonna do anything quickly and incorrectly, so.
Sure, and I had it
It was
down.
1732, was it 1732? You talking about the first 2,000?
In my recollection, the increase between the two rates would have been under $10 a month, somewhere between
That's
5
right.
and 10.
Okay, so we're,
That's for the first.
well, about for five, I think
Oh,
five.
it was for 6,200 gallons. You and I discussed it based on 6,200 gallons, and it was somewhere between $5 and $10 more a month for 6,200 gallons.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, do you know, or in the local, survey that they did for us, is that 6,200 the average, or is there more or less during the month?
Marco's average changes every month. If they do the last 12 months, the average usage changes. We use 6,200. LRWA, I believe, uses 6,200 as an average. Ken Terry can tell me if I'm wrong. If it's not 6,200, it's 6,100, it may be 6,000. It's not gonna change that range of 5 to 10.
So the majority will see that range of an increase.
Those using $6,200 will see that.
6,200 gallons. 6,200 gallons, yeah.
Okay.
So the consumption factor. Okay. Call the
Mayor,
question.
and Mayor, I mean, you've got a wealth of information about these rates. I mean, you're comfortable with this increase?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, I trust all the people who are going to these meetings, been given all the information, compiling all the information, and that's what we have. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, you're gonna give me the date of that, the deadline for that grant, or,
I'm assuming you were talking about the ARPA money?
The 1.6.
yeah, the 1.6.
The
Is there a deadline?
1.6, we have to have this in place, and LRWA has to report it to the LCDBG office before October 24th.
Okay. Call the question. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes.
Ron Moore,
Yes.
Clint Prater,
Yes.
Stephen Primo,
Yes.
Samuel Reggie,
No.
Kim Stringfellow,
No.
Brian Wilridge.
No.
I'm sorry. 4 yes, 3 no. So you've got 4 yes, 3 no? Right. yes, 3 no's, okay. Confirm. Stephen Primo? Please confirm.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, you have 4 yes, 3 no's. Okay, and it does pass. All right, next, to consider ordinance 1521, an ordinance amending the budgets for the city of Crowley for the fiscal year beginning September, let me see, make sure this is, September 1, 2020, and ending August 31, 2021, and to provide all matters relative thereto, and to repeal all ordinances and parts of ordinances inconsistent or in conflict therewith. I would ask for a motion to adopt. Offered by Mr. Primo. Second.
Second.
Second. Mr. Cavell. Discussion. Yeah, well, this is the amendment. This is the budget amendments, which you have copies of. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, can you just explain that you had some that you were taking off of that?
Yes, ma'am,
list?
if you have your copy,
Yes, sir.
thank you for bringing that up. If you all have your copy, there are some that are in red and it says R. I'm gonna ask for a motion to retract that because those particular ones were already budgeted, my mistake. Those particular items were already budgeted in this year's budget, and that's why I'm asking for a retraction. And the remainder of the items are to stay on there and to ask again for a budget, and these are budget amendments, and there are the descriptions of those. And if you look at your copy that you were given, this particular copy, you'll also see in the amendment column, that particular item, and those amounts should be included in there. I missed one, okay? Which one?
I didn't get a chance to look at your new list, but let's see. On the change order number 2, modify the sold swimming pool parking lot plans to preserve existing green. That amount was not shown in the
Change
minutes.
order number 2 to modify the old swimming pool? I
Yes,
think.
sir.
Where Mr. Miller go? That was a question, that would have been a question for him. Him and I had that discussion already, and I want to say that was included. He just modified, and it was just a change order. And it was actually.
It wasn't in the minutes, though.
It was actually, yes, ma'am.
I checked the minutes of
I
May
think it was,
12th.
and it was considered a deduction.
It wasn't, the amount was not in the minutes, and we didn't, I don't even think we discussed it in the minutes. We need to probably double check me, but.
And we can,
I
and
looked
again,
at it.
I think it's a deduction, and it's not an add-on, it is a
Oh,
deduction.
it's a, okay, gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's a deduction from,
That's why it's modified for a change order.
which, is it Southern Constructors?
No, ma'am, that would be for
Triton.
Triton.
Okay, okay. So it's a,
It's a deduction, it's not an inclusion.
but we would still need to probably have it in our
And
minutes.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Bader, it's probably, if you look in your engineer's report, you'll probably find it.
Okay.
That, I'm not gonna answer that confident,
Okay.
with confidence just at this second, but I'm sure Mr. Bader could, and I don't see him moving it.
And also,
You
the,
left it? Okay.
the insurance, claim revenue and the cost of the enterprise building,
Yeah.
that wasn't in any minutes or discussion.
That is correct. That is an insurance claim that we received from the hurricane damages from the insurance company, and it is in here. It is in your packet.
Okay.
And it does fall, it is in there as a revenue, and it is expensed on the enterprise building side as $165,000.
Okay, but the expense should be $21,988.51 claim was for $143,000.
That's correct.
Right, and the cost of repair was for $165,000.
That is the estimate that we got, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on the last page, most of those were shown in the budget, except, the drainage materials and supplies of $25,000.
It is in there, yes, ma'am.
I didn't see it because there's no account number.
There's no account number, it was assigned this year, and the title was put in, but there was no number assigned to it, but you'll see the name, which it does not have a number, and we're going to assign it a number, we just haven't
Do
yet.
you know what's the first three numbers that it come?
There's no numbers assigned to it yet.
I mean, around that area, just so I can find it.
Okay, I'll get it for you.
Okay.
So these amendments are in the new budget.
I saw that.
Bear with me, Mr. Tiller.
Mayor,
Oh, Mr. Crowley,
if you look on the public works building, public buildings and drainage expenditure,
that's what I was just looking at. I was
it's
looking
right
over there.
next to 100-52-214.
Yes, guys, I overlooked it. And it's 25,000 in the amendment column. It's right next to that item that he just called. Thank you, Mr. Crowley.
Got it?
Mayor, well, Mr.
Yes,
Charles
sir.
up here from the come back. The budget amendments, have you reviewed these, with the mayor and approved them for our consideration?
All of those y'all had already approved, all the one that he has retracted.
No, we just got this tonight before the meeting. We had the other,
Yes, we have gone over item by item to make sure they're all in the budget.
right, so
Yes, sir.
you're involved in these amendments
Yes,
and
sir.
approved them.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cabell.
Mr. Mayor, I think at this time, we need to make a decision. Mr. Mayor, I think at this time, we need to make a decision, because the ordinance already agrees with the whole list. If we make an amendment to this ordinance, we'll have to come back again with the amended ordinance. Right? You wouldn't have to have time to write the
Well, we're
ordinance.
looking for, I'm looking for a motion to amend this at this moment.
Just this list, that this list is attached to this ordinance,
And,
right?
and, also,
I understand. So if the amendment was already written out, I don't have to rewrite.
that's what he,
I'm asking for clarification of order. And is time available? I'd ask Mr. Howard, if he wasn't familiar with the process here.
I'm not familiar with what y'all are doing here, when you pass an ordinance, you have you vote to have the public hearing, and then you vote on the ordinance, I think, as you have presented it. If you make changes to it, I think you would go back through the process.
That's what I'm amend it, and get a motion to amend as read. That's what I thought, yes, that's what I was trying to do. Right, that's what he said that is correct. So we'll ask him, we'll offer him to amend, and get a motion as it's read right now.
And so you're saying that you're going to adopt it as it was advertised.
Okay.
You come.
So that is correct. So I was asking, excuse me, all right, so I was asking to amend as read, to amend as read with the list that we have. And that's what Tom is saying, we need to do, to amend as read is what we have in front of us, and I just need to get a vote on that.
Okay.
That's correct. Just making sure we get all the legal issues done correctly, that's what we're trying to do.
So, and I'm speaking over the loudspeaker now, so the council can hear me. Speaking with Mr. Reagan, he's saying that if you have had the public hearing, then you can amend the ordinance to change it tonight as you vote it. That's correct, Tom? He said, yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And I defer his decades of experience in municipal law. I promise I defer to Mr. Reagan.
So that's why I was asking in the beginning to amend what we have read.
Okay. All right, Mark, we'll get back to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Appreciate you listening.
And at this time, Mr. Mayor, if I would, I'd like to amend the motion to reflect the list, retracting all the items as noted on your list here. That was submitted tonight.
Yes, sir, to retract and to also make noted that all the rest of them will remain in the amended,
Correct.
budget amendments, I'm sorry. Okay, he's up for the motion, I'm looking for a second. Seconded by Mr. Primo, discussion, Ms. Stringfellow?
Thank you, Mayor. I still had, there was another item on here with no account number. It was a grant received for $20,000, $700.
Yes, ma'am.
What was that one?
That's in the street department,
Okay.
that's in the street department. If you'll look under the closest one, well, it is on 150-701. That's on capital outlays.
Okay.
20,712.
Okay.
And if you'll look and you flip the page, you'll see it's called other financing sources, and it's from grants.
Mhm.
This was an LGAP grant, free money.
And they'll go
And yes, and we were able to purchase some equipment with it.
for the street department?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And also, do you have the minutes of where we approved? So we didn't approve these already,
No,
these amendments. This would be what we were doing
that's the
tonight.
reason why we're amending.
Okay. Is there a reason why we're reapproving things that we already approved?
No, you approved the bill to be paid, but some of those
Oh, so
items,
this is to adjust the budget?
yes, this is to amend the current budget,
The current budget, but it's in, so.
current budget.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. And the disaster expense, it's in here as well? I didn't have a chance to look
Yes.
that one up because I
Yes,
just.
ma'am, it is, it's on,
Okay.
it's in,
It's 140,
yes, ma'am, it's under 140-911, there's a one that's missing off of it, and it's in there to be amended as well. And just to let everybody know, that this particular amount was paid, if you remember when we had the storm and we had somebody to oversee the cleanup with a particular company, and we paid that company. However, we were in, with a CEA, if you remember, Mr. Glenn, we were in a CEA, and a police jury is currently waiting on a FEMA reimbursement. And once they get it, the police jury will reimburse us the biggest percentage of it.
I think that the police jury returns to y'all everything they receive on that, because
Yes.
it was just the city's, I think it might have been Tetra Tech, I'm not sure if that's the
It was
company.
Tetra Tech, yes, sir.
And whatever the jury receives, that will come to the city.
Okay.
There.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Crater.
Yes, okay, so we were told last week that all of this was already approved and we've already amended the budget and there was general housekeeping, but what is, so I only found two things at the last meeting in the minutes that we actually talked about. What is the professional fees, $50,000? Why was that amended for that amount? And what is that for?
That is a number of things. That is Mr. Mader, engineering, that is Mr. Reagan, that is professional fees that have to come through, like every time, whenever you request information, we have to hire an engineer, we have to hire an attorney, we have to hire all these people. And this is a total, and hopefully it covers it.
So that's not accounted for in the engineering fees and in
Absolutely.
the attorney fees?
That
This
is professional fees, yes.
Professional fees is different.
And it's architects, like architects that you approve of us to move forward with a project, a number of things.
So there's three, so if I'm the attorney, I guess, trying to find out
You have,
how much, there's three different places that he gets paid, and the engineer, I guess there's two different places
Well,
that he gets paid, engineering fees.
you're
and-
asking about this one particular item, which is 140,338, and I'm answering your question. That 140,338 is professional fees, so there's a number of things that we pay through G&A, and that's what that's for, is through G&A. Whenever I just can't, if you asking for us to get, you asking Mr. Mader to get some information, well, he's gonna get information, and I can't charge the street department, so it has to come through G&A. And all of those totals have to be, whenever we get bills from Mr. Mader, we get bills from Mr. Reagan, we get bills from Mr. Hubbauer, there's a number of professionals that we use that we have to pay to this account. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd just like to say, you asked information as well. Can you just clarify, what is a fluoridization?
Fluoridation.
Code
Fluoridation.
enforcement?
Yes,
What
ma'am,
is that?
fluoridation, and I had to ask for that because they have increased because of COVID. Since COVID, they have gone up tremendously.
What is that?
Fluoridation is what they put in the water and what's mandated by law for us to put in the water. We have to order it, we have to inspect it, and we have to give it to law code to put in the water.
For the animals, or
No, for you,
why is that under code enforcement?
that's it.
I know
Fluoride.
that, but it's under code enforcement.
It is, because they have to inspect it.
But wouldn't that be under wastewater?
No, ma'am, it's water, it's fresh water that's done by the law code.
Okay, all right.
And we have to pay for the fluoridation. And unfortunately, there was an increase, and I hope it don't continue. But if it does, I'll come back to you and ask you.
I guess, Mayor, the confusion is why is it under code enforcement? I think that's-
Because, and maybe Mr. Reagan might correct me if I'm wrong, but it's done under code enforcement because it has to be inspected by code enforcement, that it is given to law code to put in the water.
So Mr. Duhon
Is
does
that
this?
right, Mr. Green?
Sounds right.
Okay.
Our code enforcement, Mr. Duhon, Tony Duhon, does he?
He's aware of it. He's aware of it. And
He does the inspection for fluoridation?
no, he's,
That's what I'm
it's
confused
going
about.
through code, it's going through code enforcement because by state statute, the city, well, change my words here, but through state statute, we have to provide the fluoride. We have to run it through code enforcement because it has to be some type of an inspection office that has to okay that it's given through law code, and law code puts it into the system.
Okay, so and who does $5,000 go to? Who gets paid that amount?
The $5,000 is what I'm asking to amend the agenda, budget amendments, excuse me. The budget amendments because of the increase in price of fluoridation because your existing budget does not cover the expense that was increased.
Right, so the city has to buy the fluoride?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Vote?
Put it in
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call please.
Jeff Cavell,
Yes.
Brian Moore,
Yes.
Clint Prayer,
Yes.
Stephen Primo,
Yes.
Samuel Reggie,
Yes.
Kim Stringfellow,
No.
Byron Woolridge.
Yeah.
6 yes, 1 no.
All right, thank you, ma'am. It passes. Okay, next we'll move to ordinance number 1522. To consider ordinance 1522, an ordinance adopting, finalizing, and implementing the annual operating budgets of revenues and expenditures for the city of Crowley for the fiscal year beginning September 1st, 2021 and ending August 31st, 2022, and to provide for all matters relative thereto, and to repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent or in conflict therewith. I'll ask for a motion to adopt,
So moved.
offered by Mr. Primo, seconded by, Mr. Cavell. Discussion.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And you know, I received this at 5:45 this afternoon, which
Yes, sir.
I assume is your second draft of the budget.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to go through a bunch of detailed questions, but can you summarize what's different in this one than the one we were provided with a few weeks ago?
Yes, sir.
First draft?
The amended, number one, the amendment, tried to list every one of them, and look, I may have forgotten one. There's a lot of work put into it, and I want to thank Mr. Apsher and also Mr. Cavell, but there was a lot of work put in, and look, and I may have forgotten one, and if I did, please let me know. And again, if you let me know and with changes, we can absolutely consider them tonight. But I'm hoping that, and from what we did check, that all of those were put into that column on the amendment column, okay? That's one change, all right? So from the other, I'm gonna say the other part of it is that the question that you're asking, in summary, we also, making sure that everyone knows, there is a 5% increase across the board, pay increase for all of the employees of the city of Crowley, excluding all elected officials, which is the judge, the chief of police, myself, council, city attorney does not, judge does not. It's all of the employees of the city of Crowley, policemen, firemen, so forth and so on.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. So, the 5% now, the fire department every year gets a 2%.
That is correct.
So
Thank you.
do they get a 7% now?
No, sir.
So
Thank
that
you.
would,
Thank you for bringing that up, and I will clarify that. So we had to go through, which took a lot of time, we had to go through every single fireman. There is a 2% mandate for each fireman that has been there 3 years to 23 years. There is a 2% mandate. So to make it fair for everyone, those particular firemen who are mandated to get the 2% will only get 3%, which will total up to 5%, which will be fair to everyone else that will get 5%, if that makes sense.
yes, thank you.
Okay. All of the police officers, like I said, every employee, excluding all elected officials. Again, I'm just trying to go down all the people in my head. There's people that work in court. The city prosecutor is not getting, again, employees of the city of Crowley.
That's fine, I understand that, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And what other changes?
Mr. Charlie, you might want to come up in case if I do have a question. But,
There were just a few other minor changes. The utility department had a couple of requests. I
Yeah.
think probably maybe like $15,000-$20,000 that was not in their budget that should have been.
no, I'm sorry, Mr. Charlie. Also, Mr. Crater did inform us, and it's in this particular budget that you have. It wasn't on the other one. If you look as what he was talking about, repairs And Ms. Stringfellow, I think I did tell you that one, and thank you for calling Ms. Stringfellow. Also, we increased on repairs and supplies. If you go to utility, you'll see that some repairs and supplies on your older one, it had, I want to say 37,000. But Tim was very, very concerned because of the amount of pumps that he has to replace yearly. So we brought it back up to what it was previously budgeted, or is currently budgeted, to $75,000 for each of those lines. And you'll see the increase on those. I'm sorry, Mr. Charlie, go ahead.
And I think there was a minor change in the youth rec
Yes,
also.
yes, if you notice, when you do the youth rec operations, there was a capital outlay for $540,000, and we went and adjusted it to $525,000, because if you remember, whenever you got your business plan from the youth recreation department, that number was based on the $525,000, not the $540,000 that was previously done. And then that was adjusted. And also, you'll find it on the page of your youth operation, other sources. It's on the last page of youth rec operation, and you'll see the $525,000 that is placed there to expend it on that side. And also, Mr. Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, we could not put it on capital outlay because it's not a liability, is that correct?
That's correct. It is, it's a lease payment, so that's why it's in other sources.
And of course, if you look at your, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Grader.
And on the utility sewer, there's a $400,000 decrease. Can you explain
Are
why?
you looking at your old one or new one?
I'm looking, the new one from the old one. The old one was 2.
Which page are you on?
It's on that,
On the summary page, the second page.
there's no counting.
On the second page,
You're looking at the recap, or you're looking
the
at?
expenditures and appropriations. The old budget was 2.4, now it's just only 2 million, it's $400,000 difference. I was just wondering why there was such a big decrease from the last budget, or the first proposed budget to this one, the utility and sewer.
It's on the
This-
second.
Mr. Cabell?
Wouldn't that be the 625 DEQ revolving loan that you brought back in?
The DEQ revolving loan was not in your original budget, but it's a wash because it's put in as a revenue source and an expense. So that's the increase.
Went down.
Yes, so it wasn't in your budgeted item at that point, and we just put it in your new one, and you'll notice
The
it.
net effect was zero, but it was put in both places.
And it'll actually zero it out, so it's like what you're saying, it's a wash. So it's on an expense side, and it's on a revenue side.
Okay, and
Yes, sir.
And last week, I asked that because every other budget that I looked up all the way going back to the prior administration had
Yes.
actual estimated, had salaries,
Okay.
and had fund balances, and this
Yeah,
one,
and I-
we still don't have that.
That's right, and you don't, and I apologize for that, Mr. Critter, you did ask for it, and Mr. Asher and I are working on that. I apologize, we just didn't have the amount of resources and time to be able to get that for you at this point.
There's
However,
a schedule coming that will give you that.
Mr. Reggie?
I guess my only question is, I haven't heard anything about cost cutting.
Yeah,
I mean, they got a lot of money that's being spent, and some stuff went up way high.
Okay.
So what are we doing to cut some cost?
If you could be a little bit more.
Well, I mean, like, there's some internet stuff that I think I saw was 12 grand or something, maybe for.
Yes, there were very much increases on that, and that was a deal that was signed by Mr. Mayor Greg Jones at that time during his administration. It's a 5-year contract that we are hoping to be able to soon get out of, or try to reevaluate it.
I think the other thing I saw was like office supplies, some of them had doubled.
Office supplies, I'm glad you brought that up. If you look at the office supplies, that is also on an amended, it is also on an amended, budget amendment, and the increase in office supplies, and I'm also putting it in there to be able to get a copy machine. Code enforcement has been bombarded with the amount of photographs, so we're trying to come up, and these are some of the cut, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So these are some of the costs that we're trying to eliminate, is that we were making copies, and Ms. Jones, she's not here anymore, but she can tell you, they're using her copy machine to make all of these copies of these pictures that they have to go out and take. And I'm telling you, it's 100 times more than what it ever was. And it costs money. I don't remember the exact cost, but I'm telling you, it's a few $100s, it's like $300 a cartridge. And it's very, very expensive. And the increase in office supplies that we're using, and I'm not just blaming them, but the majority of it is coming from them. Also, if you look in the budget, I've also requested for more so I can get them their own copy machine, so we don't bombard Miss Jones' copy machine and it breaks, and we gotta get a new one for her. So we're trying to utilize it. And then the other way that we're looking at cutting cost with that particular item is that Valerie and it is going to be showing Mr. Tony and Mr. Tony how to be able to save and file all of these particular photographs instead of printing them, and that would help save cost on, copy paper, ink cartridges, so on and so on, and we're hoping to be able to cut costs. That's one of the ideas. I hope I answered some of your questions. Mr. Cabell?
If I would, Mr. Reddy, the actual expenditures for the budget we're in right now, expenditures was budgeted $22,330,000. We're actually proposing an expenditure budget of $20,985,000. So we've cut over $1 million something in the budget as far as expenditures. And that's even adding and accounting for all departments at full load with increases and knowing and trying to foresee through there's no magical crystal ball, what inflation, as we all know, is going to happen in the near future. So I respect wanting to cut costs, I do as well. But in actuality, we actually have, as well as keeping the city provided for a full year, full set.
If I may add to that, and what we're trying to do, and Chief, along with the police department, what we're trying to do with this budget as well, is we're going back and looking at pre-COVID status. So we're trying to get the city up to par to what we were pre-COVID status. Firemen, police officers, we're trying to get everybody pre-COVID status. G&A, street department, wastewater, and look, I'm telling you, it's a difficult task to find somebody to work today. It really is. So we're very fortunate, but I'm just trying to explain that to you, that we're trying to get back to a status of pre-COVID status. So, Ms. Stringfellow, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Excluding the fire department and the police department, of course, why do we budget for overtime?
Why don't we?
Why do we budget for overtime?
Why do we? For a number of reasons. I mean, there are reasons. We have overtime, we do festivals.
But that's
we have
another
different
line
events.
item, is a
Well,
festival.
we have different events, like right now, I mean, we're shorthanded, we have people that, people get, I know they have sick leave, but there's some times where we have to get things done,
Right. I just don't, I don't know. And, what we spent in overtime on just, one line item was a little bit over 4,500, and we're, we budgeted like more for it, so I was just curious
Yes,
why.
ma'am, and we tried to accommodate this budget and utilizing the expenses that were done and audited, along with the expenses that we had, along with what was budgeted. So we tried to get it as close as possible to with making cuts and also what's needed.
And then can I ask Mr. Abshire? Mr. Abshire, how did y'all determine the percentage column?
That's an increase from last year to this year.
Okay, because some of those aren't correct.
Well, there's columns that we use that are not presented in the budget that are used to get those percentages.
Okay.
And then, okay. I don't know who's first.
I went on the percentage. Yeah, I calculated these also, and when, some of them reflect on these particular line items, the correct percentage, but some of them are incorrect.
So,
Maybe it's a copy and paste of an Excel
It could be,
program.
yes, we can double check all those.
Okay, please.
I thought we had double checked.
Yeah, because
We'll go back
I've
over
noticed
it.
several of them,
checked your corrected copy?
Yes, I just did.
No, he did.
Well, I just took one page, but I've got several pages.
Okay?
Is this on Excel?
Yes.
Is this something that we can get in there? I hate to burden, your time, but I can just check the formulas and see.
Well, I'll tell you what, and Charlie, you may disagree with me or whatever, but if you don't mind, but I think percentages are probably irrelevant at this point. We're just talking about dollars, and if you look at the dollars, I apologize, the percentages aren't exactly what we're looking for, but, and percentages are nice that you can look at, but there may be some that are incorrect according to what the tabulation was.
Right, I'd just like to see.
But if you wanted questions about these percentages, if you were to make a mark, or whatever you may have, and feel free, to call Mr. Charlie.
Sure.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Charlie, but if it's okay with you, Charlie.
Be happy to.
And I guess the other question I had was, with the year-to-date estimates, is that something that was considered where we are right now? Because normally we'd have a column as, I gave you the sheet there on the legislative auditor, and we took the workshop.
Year-to-date estimate.
Yes.
Okay.
According to the legislative auditor's best practices, I gave a 70%. And I was hoping to see where we are in the current budget in order to make these projections to see if we're going above or below for these line items. Mr. Charles, is that something you have in your office that can be plugged in?
The audited 2020 numbers and the year-to-date numbers that we had available when we started using the budget were considered in coming up with these numbers.
But the year-to-date where we are right now isn't reflected in.
No, it's not, because with all the conversion and the computer system and that, we were just not comfortable giving those numbers on this report.
But you feel comfortable knowing where we are now to approve, to have this budget presented to us?
Yes.
In your opinion, because we're going to rely on you heavily as a certified public accountant.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Braden?
So I see there was 2.3 million added into the budget for the American Fund Grant. And there's only like the 1.7 million. Did some of this money get put into this budget?
It did. The 2.3 got put into this upcoming budget because of the funds that we were going to be, and I had to put it in the budget.
But did you account for some spending from that 2.3, is what I'm asking?
Yes, it was all accounted for in expenditures also.
I thought we didn't.
So we can't,
Yeah, we
we
can't.
can't allocate because we don't have the final rules.
We don't, and that's why it's in G&A. Am I correct, Mr. Charlie?
Correct. It wasn't allocated to any special things. We just put it in there so you didn't think you had extra 2.3 million already to spend.
Right, so it hasn't been allocated to expense line item.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. It can be allocated to the 100 fund and then dispersed to the proper channels, or dispersed to the proper funds once we receive it. But,
Once we receive the money or the final rule.
no, once you receive the money.
And know how to spend it.
And we don't know how
Well,
we
we
spend
don't-
it. We don't know how to spend it, but we have to account for it.
Yes, well, absolutely. But as Mr. Crater said,
It should be in the balance.
And the balance,
Just seems like if you put $2.3 million in the budget and you didn't spend any of it, then it should be in the supplement or the net revenues over or under expenditures in this case. I would think, but evidently you accounted for a good portion of it, or some of it. I mean, last budget it was $1 million, now this budget's not quite that much.
What's your question specifically?
There's $2.3 million added to the budget for COVID relief fund.
Correct.
And there's a net revenue under expenditures of 1.7 million. So that leaves, what, I mean, the last budget, it was actually less than that, it was 1.3 million. So $1 million was used in this other budget that we have. But now it's not quite that much, and I was just wondering, it seems to me like that money was accounted for somewhere, to spend it somewhere, and I don't know where it's being spent. I would think that you would have a $2.3 million balance if you had a balanced budget before you use these COVID relief funds.
It was put in revenue and expenses. It just was not allocated to the departments where y'all ultimately gonna spend it. It just was all left in general fund.
Right, so you are using some of that money for this budget, to balance this budget.
It's in and out. According for right now, because we don't know how y'all gonna allocate it, or how y'all be able to allocate it. So we put it in as a revenue and we showed it as an expense.
That was on both ones. So yes, you have to, you know you're gonna get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to show it you're getting it. You're showing it for the balance on the other side to expend it. So you basically, what you've done was just under grants, American Relief Fund grant, under general fund budget revenue detail, $2.3 million. Then expensed under miscellaneous, American Relief Fund contingency, under the general GA expenditure detail, $2.3 million. It's just an in out.
It's just a wash.
That's not actually where it's gonna be spent.
You see it?
There's no specificity as to how it's going to be spent yet.
Look, you see that page, Clint?
What page is
100,
Yeah.
100, Clint.
Look at the
100, it's under item number 100, 40996. So it's almost like a wash. So your question is that you were looking at the revenue side of it, but you didn't see the expense side of it. So the expense side of it is on the right below, but there was not a number assigned to it because it's brand new. But we assigned a name for it, and it's called miscellaneous American Relief Fund contingency, meaning that we can allow it to go in the 100 fund and be dispersed in whatever specific fund that we are allowed to be able to spend it in. You found it? Okay, any other? You found it? Okay. Okay, great. Any other questions? Ms. Stringfellow?
I had it and then I lost it.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. On repairs and supplies, on 150,214, we spent 189,000.
Let me get there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. 100-50-214. 214, repairs and supplies.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and that's Public Works.
The street department.
Okay. And so they went over, of course, they went over budget by quite a bit. So,
What do you mean, I'm sorry?
well, they
Oh,
were
the audited-
budgeted.
That was the audited number.
Right, the audited number is
Right.
what they spent, and they were budgeted 25,000.
No, the pre.
Okay, so, what were we,
Ma'am,
no, I mean, this is what they, mhm.
This year, their budget is 25.
How much
That's what I said, they were budgeted for 25,000.
You don't know what they're going to do, you don't have those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
we don't have the audited numbers just yet from the auditor.
We don't have that estimated.
Well, okay,
We
Okay.
always have the estimated
That's
number.
why you keep.
You might have, we don't have.
You do have it, you have everything I have.
The estimated.
So whether you brought it with you or
Yeah,
not.
but he-
no, I have last year's budget.
Sure, that's what we're.
Right, I just, but my point point is, okay, say they did spend that, and we're gonna reward them, giving them more in that budget line item. You see what I mean? There's a few in there that we need to we need some kind of explanation why we're going over those budgeted line items, and not just going and giving them a bigger
Okay, 'cause
budget for the
on that-
next time.
On that particular line, and I understand your point, on that particular line, it was currently budgeted at 25. We're just asking for 30,000. It's currently budgeted at 25, we're asking for 30.
Right.
The year before, I don't know all of the, I don't have all of those.
So you're
names,
saying the
vendors.
audited number is the 2019-2020 number,
That's
audited
correct.
number,
2020,
so
that's
we're
right.
missing a whole column in here.
No, that's an audited number, that's the,
But we're missing like a column that we got in last year's budget. You see what I mean? Like with a projection, or like what we thought we spent, an estimated actual, I guess, is what I'm saying. Just so we can compare, I mean, we can try to see,
okay,
right.
I don't. Now, and I think I understand what you're asking, and Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, they're asking for the estimated actual. So as soon as we can get those numbers to you and calculate it, but I can't right now, I apologize, I just can't because of the transition with the computer system. We're still working on that. And, yes, sir,
May I make a suggestion?
yes,
Okay, so when we do get the actual numbers and you supply them, if the budget at that point needs to be amended, that's what it's for, that's what we're here to do. You know, even the estimated actual, we also found, wasn't all reliable, because when you project certain figures on certain accounts out throughout 12 months, unless you know exactly what that is, you're going to be overwhelming your budget. I'll give you a perfect example, consumables. Yes, that can be spread over 12 months, but if you look at ad valorem, where you are licensures, where you go get them within the first 2-3 months of its calendar year, if you try to spread that over 12 months, you're actually showing revenues that you wouldn't be getting. So that estimated actual really isn't all that something that can be looked at as a viable solution. And like Charlie said, we took into account what actual numbers we had to the date, along with what was audited. I don't know what else, as far as tools, that anybody doing budget could ask for.
yes, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Cavell, for helping with the budget, I appreciate it. But there were a lot of even audited 2020 numbers that weren't on here. Now, they may be on the new budget that we just received, but there were a few that were missing. So I don't know if those numbers just weren't in the audit or what happened. So it's hard to compare when you don't even have the audited 2020 numbers. So, and then there was a page where we had adopted budget of 2019, 2020, I believe. We like to change that heading on a page, and I can't think of where it is now, but there's many. I just have a lot of things, and I apologize. I should have got to you sooner with all of my questions, but and they may be reflected in the second draft. So.
And again, Mr. Charlie's available. If you have any other questions, I'm available. Please give me a call.
Sure.
I can answer any question you have. I'll be glad to. We'll do the best that I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a lot of tabs here that I had questions on, but then I don't have any time to go through this.
That's right.
So just bear with me. One thing, in the police department, body camera annual expense, $40,000, chief, you had mentioned that. Is that in the budget?
No, it's not, but the chief and I and Captain Avery, I'm pretty sure you were in this conversation. I know Captain, there he is. And we talked about, there was some money that is coming available to be able to purchase those body cameras. Remember that conversation that we had?
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I mean, if there's money.
Chief?
But Mayor, isn't that a one-time fee, and there's still part of a contract, 2-3 years left?
But,
Yeah.
right, but whenever I was talking to Captain Avery, we were gonna get with Mr. Nick Penn and find out more details about it, because we were able to come up with some money, grant money, talking about this grant money, some free money, to be able to purchase those that you said, Captain Avery, you were in need of. Am I correct?
Yes, the reimbursement for the grant for the body.
That is correct.
Was that the one from what, Representative Stefanski said?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because we were looking at other items, since we assumed that the 40,000 was already gonna be budgeted into this coming year's budget.
That was
So-
never mentioned whenever I spoke to Captain.
Well, you talking about that's from Mr. Massey? Yeah, no, we were looking at the message board,
Yeah, we were looking at other things because we were under the assumption that the 40,000, since the council had approved and you had signed, that it was already gonna be included in this year's budget.
I don't remember that conversation.
Perhaps we need to have that. And I guess, Mayor, what other revenues are put in for public safety as far as crime prevention? Christopher George was here and many others, very concerned about, addressing the criminal and crime in our city. Rice Festival coming up, a lot of concerns.
Well, the Rice Festival budget was put back in there for the police department. That was, I don't know if you saw it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was included.
Yes, but other, avenues to look into as far as the surveillance cameras and things, are those things still being discussed,
Okay, well,
consideration?
no, sir, we are, we put Mr. Glenn on the spot, but I just called again about 2 weeks ago and spoke to Mr. Morrell, and they're still trying to get a grant. Still trying to get a grant on surveillance, and we're gonna try to partner up with them.
And they did talk about that at this month's meeting. What was that, just last night? Cameras were, it was on the agenda, I know, there was some talk about trying to get that done. And they were talking about kind of grant money, I know that.
We're still waiting on word. And there were a couple of meetings, I know we invited, Captain, Hebert, and we've also invited the chief. He could not make it, and, we had discussions about this budget. And, there are also additional revenues that have been added to the Crowley Police Department.
And which of those, Mayor?
Sir,
What
under
revenues?
wages.
Yes, I know,
And
you said additional.
that doesn't just cover 5% increase. That also covers an additional $150,000. Anywhere from $150,000 to $160,000 to the police department and fire department. I don't know if you saw that.
For their wages, but I was saying,
No, yes, sir, but it's a cushion for them to be able to utilize for enforcement. They may have people that are short, they may have short shifts. Captain Hebert and I spoke about that many times. You've even mentioned it once or twice. There are short shifts, just like fire department. We've been up here, and you guys have appropriated funds to be able to increase and amend. That's, part of the budget amendments to get for the fire department. They were overtime, cheaper than overtime. Look, we even gave the chief $13,000 back to his budget to try to help him out. I mean, you guys did. And, that it's all part of this, of what we worked on the budget to be able to add that 150, don't quote me, I'm not doing the math exactly, but if you look at it, it's anywhere from $150,000 to $160,000 that's been allocated to the wages, to be able to, for him
Well,
to
I'm
be
saying
able
about the wages, Mayor,
Well-
I'm thinking about other things, like, for instance,
well, he runs, once he's given that, it's his department. And once he's given that money, he can accommodate however he wants to restructure his department. If he wants to restructure and put other people on the road, or if he wants to hold it, use it for overtime, or I'd say overtime, please, retract that statement. And if he wants to be able to utilize it to just to restructure his people, he might be short, he's been short how long? Okay.
A long time.
yes.
I don't know who was first, I'm sorry. I looked at chief and then I looked back and I see hands. All right, Mr. Felton.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think, just to clarify, the chief can change his line items around because
It's his
it's his department,
Yes, ma'am.
it's a little bit different than the fire department.
Yes.
He can't change his, but the chief has a certain set amount, and I told you that, and he can move his around as he sees fit for his department. But the fire department, that is not the same case.
It's close, but the chief has the authority to do that.
Right, the chief has the authority to do
That is
that,
correct.
right.
That is correct. Mr. Cavell?
I'll basically just say the same thing. We are required to present the chief's budget per line item, but after that, once he receives it, he gets to utilize it as he sees fit.
Mr. Crater?
And Mr. Absher, when can we expect to have the actual estimated for 2020, 2021, the salaries added to the budget, the fund balances for 2019, 2021 budget, 2021 estimated, and 2022 proposed? When do you think we'll have those? Because they were always in all of the budgets before. It's not something that I'm just pulling out of the air. I think it's something important because
We will have the fund balance and the salaries to you next week. As far as the estimated 2021, but actual numbers, you're gonna have to wait out for the audit. And the audit hasn't even started yet.
There is a meeting Monday with the auditor and Ms. Chantel with the clerk on Monday to start setting that up.
Mayor, Mr. Absher, are you familiar with the best practices for municipal accounting by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor?
I've seen them before, yeah.
Right, and we went to the Louisiana Municipal Association's conference and attended, I know myself was there, Mr. Cavell and the mayor, and Mr. Crater and Stringfellow, and where they went over, about what they recommend that municipalities provide within the budgets to present to the council. And a lot of the questions that we're raising tonight certainly reflects what's in their recommended practices. And certainly, I would like for you to have the latest information that we received, because I think this will give you the column items as far as the actual year-to-date estimates. Now, I know that you're saying about the audit, but we do have expenditures that have been made throughout this current fiscal year, and you can estimate based on that what the final numbers would be at the end of the year, in some form or fashion. Because I'm sure you have to look at that in order to budget for the upcoming year.
That's correct, but you also have to realize the year you'll have with the clerks leaving, transition to a new computer system, the numbers were just not as available as they have been in prior years.
Yes, but with that said, I would like you to maybe insert the numbers you feel that you're relying on, that we can rely on, to go forward. If that would be, because you've got to rely on something, and we'd like to see what you're relying on, and just to share with us and put whatever caveats about, the accuracy. But I know that you have to know where we are in this current budget to set the new budget amounts. And would you like, I got an extra copy.
Now,
You're the professional, and by all means.
now, if I may, Mr. Absher, and Mr. Absher, thank you so much. And Mr. Absher came up with the idea, and I don't mean to throw this at you, Mr. Absher,
You're the pro.
but he came up with the idea of putting this format together to where it would be a little bit easier for everyone to understand, a little bit easier to navigate through. And, but anyway, with that said, whenever this new computer system is full-fledged and rolling, chances are that computer system will have its own budgetary process, its own format. And so that's going to be another format that's going to be added to our next budget whenever that comes up. Just giving you a heads up with this new computer system.
I appreciate that, Mayor, but I'm about,
And I know we have
about to
received.
give up on the new computer system. We've been promised that since last September.
Please don't, because we actually are a lot, we're moving really well, if I'm not mistaken. Ms.
We're
Youngin.
moving in the right direction.
We're moving in the right direction.
Oh, good, that's good to hear from you.
I know we have, and of course, like what Mr. Crowley said, and look, I'm not gonna keep beating a dead horse, but anyway, if you ever get a chance, speak to Mayor Robichaud from Rain. We are currently, I think, 4 months into it, maybe five. I'm trying to remember the date we tried to get started. And we are attempting to go live, and it's a very difficult task. There's a lot of information. You've seen our budgets, you see how difficult they are. Mr. Ron Carter's not here, and he will tell you the same. Mr. Robichaud, Mayor Robichaud from Rain, will tell you it took them almost 2 years. 2 years before they got it the way they wanted to get it. And we're hoping to do this in about 6 to 8 months. We're hoping. You know, and I think I know we've been looking at it, I know we've been reviewing things about the computer, I know we've been really working hard. I wish we had somebody from the computer system here with us, but we don't. They're very available, they help us, they have their support team, and they're very, very helpful, and it looks like, and Ms. Chantel can tell you, she has been here just a week, and she's already doing journal entries, she's already doing all kinds of things, adjustments, and she's really good at it. Some other employees are getting better at it as well. And we feel that it's going to be something that has been needed for a long time, and it's going to be a good asset to the city to be able to conduct business efficiently and much better. Any other questions? Okay. All right. We'll call for a vote. Sorry. Madam Clerk, roll call. It would, yes, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Jeff Cavell,
Yes.
Brian Moore,
No.
Clint Frayer,
No.
Stephen Primo,
Yes.
Samuel Reggie,
No.
Kim Stringfellow,
No.
Byron Woolridge.
No.
Okay, there are 4 noes, 2 yeses. It does not pass. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I apologize, thank you for the correction. Okay, it does not pass. We'll have to set a date for another, we'll have to set a date for another special meeting. We'll let you know. Any other business to come? I have motion to adjourn. Mr. Jeff, motion, second by Mr.
I'd like to request a copy of the budget from the city. I still have not been provided one. Thank you.
First or second?
Also, I invite all of the council members to come by my office, communicate with me, let me know what your needs are, what your concerns are. What your concerns are, but we gotta set a date and get this done.
Yeah, I'd like to, as soon as we get that information there, be able to review what we've got tonight. Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Miss Desiree?